Welcome to my podcast. My guest today is Carol Connors, who is best known for co-writing the theme song to Rocky. Unfortunately, during the taping of our podcast, we had some technical difficulties and Carol's video was not recorded. Sound is great, totally fine. So if you listen to your podcast audio only, you're not going to experience anything different than you normally would. If you do like to visually watch podcasts, well, we try to do our best to work around this issue, but I think we've come up with some interesting visuals that you're still going to enjoy. Carol is an icon. She's an absolute gem, and I can't wait for you guys to meet her.
Can I call you Ms. Z?
Yes, absolutely. Truly an honor to have you on here. I am such a huge fan.
Thank you.
So honored to also know you and kind of call you a friend, if I may be so bold. I was thinking about when we met, and I feel like you have been such a staple around Hollywood, but I think we actually met in terms of really starting to know each other was last summer at the premiere of The Gray Man that Netflix had in Hollywood. I remember being there with my friend Natalie, and all of a sudden you appeared with like a publicist from Netflix, and you had your camera and you sat with us.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah.
Now, I remember that the film to me was like this could never happen, outrageous, James Bond on steroids, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
But it was a wonderful premiere, and I loved going. I took my friend who was my house guest, and he had
Yes.
never been to a premiere at the Roman Chinese. So it was quite exciting. And you were so pretty and so
Oh,
lovely. And I remember we started talking.
yeah. And then I think I saw you next at a house up Mount Olympus at some screening during award season. After that, it was like, was it not the Asher House, but
The Rosses.
Ross
And it's
House?
to me one of the most my favorite place, or one of them, is to get to see a pre-Oscar film at the Rosses,
Yes.
because they are just such elegant people, and just the setting and the beauty, and the film and their screening room, because he was involved in sound, is exceptional. And yes, and I walked in, I'll never forget this. You had just seen the Spector advance copy of the documentary, the
Yes.
four-part documentary on Showtime, and you went, "Oh my God, oh my God, Carol Connors! Oh, I just saw you." And
Yes.
I
I
was
was,
so touched
yeah.
that you were so taken by it.
Well, I mean, after having met you and us having seen each other, to my surprise, when I tuned into that 4-part documentary on Showtime, who comes up right away and is like interviewed throughout was you. And to me, I remember that trial because I was an anchor at KTLA at that time, and I covered it from the news desk. So it always evokes like my early careers in journalism, and then to see you there, just all intertwined. So yeah, I did get excited to see you because I couldn't wait to talk to you, because I had no idea that your life was intertwined with him, which is where, let's dive into that part, because you were born and bred in LA, correct?
No, I
No.
was born in New Jersey, the Garden State,
Oh,
and I and I came here to California, not on my own, obviously, when I was 5, and my sister was 3.5.
yeah. So basically, you grew up here,
Yes, I grew up here, but was not.
but was not
New
born.
Brunswick, New Jersey. I'm a Jersey girl.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. But so being raised here, um, it to me as a transplant, I mean, I moved here from Canada 30 years ago. So I'm a transplant, but I have kids who were born here and they're now in their teens. And, having LA kids who are born and bred is like, it's a whole other thing. It's a whole other thing. So tell me about growing up in LA back in your day. Like when you went to Fairfax High School, what decade was that?
Many decades ago.
So I drive past Fairfax High School all the time. Back then, it
Oh, it's
must have,
very, very different today. It's very
right?
different.
Yeah.
First of all, I was supposed to go to Hamilton High School,
Oh,
but
yeah.
because when I was in the district for Hamilton, but
That's in the
because
Valley,
I
though.
was
Is Hamilton not in
no,
the
no, no,
Valley?
Hamilton High was in LA proper. I was coming out of junior high school, which was Louis Pasteur, and
Mm.
that was where we were supposed to go. But I was not the most popular kid in school, and I yearned. Oh, it's okay. I can see your facial expression. I yearned to be popular. and to be known. I mean, it was sort of something I really wanted. So I found a way. I didn't want to go where the two most popular girls were going, which was Francine Bunny Weisbart and also Joni Bear. And they were the queens of Louis Pasteur Junior High. And I remember one story that growing up that really saddened me so much. We did book reports in those days. I don't know if they still do them today, but
Yeah.
Bunny had a team, and she would have all her friends on it, and they would pick them as the teacher went around. And I was the only one left standing in the line, and she had to pick me for her team.
And you knew that she didn't want that, right?
Yes, I was very
Yeah.
aware of it. And
Heartbreaking.
we went to her home to do the report, and I had a minor role. I think I played a tree or something. And she said, "My father is so handsome. He looks like Clark Gable." And all the girls went, including me, went, "Oh, and ah." Well, my father, her father was tall, dark, and handsome. My father had been a jockey. So he was 5 feet tall. That's why I'm so tall. And had gotten hurt on the horses. He had broken his nose and whatever. And my father, in my mind, was not tall, dark, and handsome, obviously. And I was so embarrassed that I couldn't say, "Well, my father's tall, dark, and handsome too." It really made such an impression on me. And I remember we did the book report, and I never forgot that she didn't want me on the team. But the
Yeah.
irony of this, the tragedy of this, is years later, I bumped into Francine Bunny Weisbart. And I said, "How are you?" And she said, "Annette," my real name, "Annette, Carol Connors?" And I went, "Yes." And she said, "My best days were in high school, in junior high school and high school." She said, "Those are the days I remember about my life." And I said, "No, no, no, Bunny." She said, "Look at what you've done with yours." I said, "You will do things too." She committed suicide.
Oh,
I never forgot that. I
wow.
was so saddened by that in her mind, those were her days
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
nothing to live for. And she
Yeah.
ended up committing suicide after I saw her.
You know,
Not
it
because of me, but
no,
that's what
of
had happened.
course, because it's a mental illness, and if she thought that those were her best years, that's tough. And so in school, in high school, is when you began your music career, and somewhere there is when Phil Spector entered your life, correct?
Well, it was a little bit before that. It was before Donna and I were going. We were graduating to go into high school, and we were both going to Fairfax. I had talked my mother, and my mother went to the school board or whatever and was able to get me a transfer to go to Fairfax. So Phil was dating my girlfriend Donna, and we were like in between junior high school and high school. And I was sort of the beard or the lookout or whatever you want to call me in
Yeah,
those days.
the
And
third
they were
wheel.
smooching and kissing and doing a little light petting and I would be watching to make sure they were in the car. And I would always be doing two things: twiddling my thumbs, which I still do, and singing.
Oh.
And one day Phil said to me, "I love your voice."
How old was he at this time?
He would have been 18 because he was going to be leaving high school. And I was like 18 and a half. And he said, "I love your voice. I'm going to write a song for it. Do you have $10?" I went, $10? Phil, I don't have 10 cents. I'm 16 and a half years of age. There's no money in my lunch box. He said, "Well, if you can get $10 together, I'll write the song and you can be in our singing group." So I went to my mom and dad and I said, "I need $10." We were poor. We were not destitute, but we were poor. And $10 in those days was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I said, "Mom, I need $10." And my mother said, "Go do your homework." I said, no, I must have $10. I was very precocious. And my father, who had been a jockey, was not a gambling man, but jockeys live on the edge.
Yes, they do.
Gail, give her the $10. And my mother said, Julius, we don't have $10 to spare. And I said, but mom, if you give me the $10, we're going to live in a mansion. We're going to have a beautiful car. And daddy, I'm going to buy you a racehorse. And my father said, I don't want a racehorse. I'm off the track and no racehorse. Finally, my parents gave me the $10. And I went to Phil. And the backstory of that is Phil and his sister Shirley and his mother Bertha lived in New York. And his father committed suicide. And his mother took the children to California.
Mm-hmm.
So on his father's epitaph, it said, to know him was to love him. And he turned it into a teenage lament. He literally produced and cast my voice. He loved the sound of my voice. So we went in and we cut the flip side of it, and it was called Don't You Worry, My Little Pet. And I would go, I'll think of you. Yes, I will. And it was an awful song, but my voice on tape kept cutting through. And he said, I even love your voice more on tape than I did when you at school, when you were, just singing. So he wrote the song. And he said, well, be here tomorrow. We have to go back in the studio and you have to learn it. And I said, well, how am I going to get there? And I don't have a car and I can't drive. I'm too young. He said, take the bus. So I did. And I took the bus. We went we were like a garage band, actually a garage band. We rehearsed, went in the studio a couple days later. The song went on to become the #1 record in the world, not just the United States, the world. Germany, England, Japan, France. And it was like it exploded.
Yeah, I mean, it was the #1 song on the Billboard Hot 100, and that made you the first woman to ever chart, like you, which is incredible.
In a group, yes. And the Fleetwoods, which came after us, was the reversal when they did I'm Mr. Blue, boo-doo-doo-doo, was a guy with the two girls. So they took the formula of Phil and reversed it. And that is how it just ended up being the #1 record in the world, and was #1 for the longest of that year. And it's the reason Elvis Presley became my first boyfriend.
Well, we'll get to Elvis Presley in
I
one
knew you
second here,
would.
in 1 second. But so you're 16 and a half. Phil is about 18.
18 and a half.
He 18 and a half. Now, of course, we all know how his life ended, and
yes.
and all the tragedies that happened to him. But back then, what was he like? And did you feel safe and comfortable around him?
He was whimsical. He was brilliant. He was funny. He and Marshall Lee, the other teddy bear, who was gorgeous. And when we would fly somewhere, like when we did the Perry Como show, for instance, all the stewardesses would hit on Marshall because he was so handsome. And Phil drooled, and he was like a Nebusha looking guy, and nobody cared anything about me except my voice. So Phil and I would spend a tremendous amount of time together. In those days, it wasn't a jet, it was a propeller plane.
Mm.
And he would do Lenny Bruce. He loved Lenny Bruce. And he loved Jonathan Winters. And he would imitate like Ma Frickett. He would, and I can still imitate Phil imitating Jonathan Winters doing Ma Frickett, And he was very special. His favorite composer was Wagner, my least favorite composer. And he told me once, he said, the bridge of To Know Him Is to Love Him is taken from, there are notes that are similar to a Wagnerian opera.
Mm.
And he had, in those days, nobody had ever heard those chord changes. Da, 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 dee, da, 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 da. They were so unusual. It was all Phil.
Well, then he went on to gain so much fame with building the wall of sound, and you're watching all of this unfold. But then, when tragedy struck and the this death of Lana Clarkson happened in his mansion in the subsequent trial, how did that make you feel? Or did he had so much time passed that it almost felt like a different person? Like, was he a stranger to you, or was there a disassociation, or was there still some connection that you felt that was very tragic for you?
Well, I was very aware of Phil's incredible genius. I mean, I was aware that he was, the genius of rock and roll, or one of them. We did not really, Phil had a tendency of creating and then destroying. So he was almost like a Svengali.
Mm.
And, I had a terrible car accident right after to know him. Not right after, and that helped break up the group. But Phil knew that the formula for to know him is to love him was the sound of my voice and the simplicity, not the wall of sound, which was his other. They were like mini Wagnerian operas. But I love how you love me. I love how your eyes close. He found the Paris sisters because the girls told me this, and he told them to study my voice. That they wouldn't, Priscilla wouldn't sound like me, but that to study the honesty of my voice. As Talia Shire from Rocky said about that era of music, she said Carol was the innocence of our youth, her voice. And Phil, the first time I heard I Love How You Love Me, and I talk about this on the documentary, I was driving in my car, and it was raining, and the song came on. And for one nanosplit second in time, as Robin Williams would say, I thought it was me. And then I realized I had never recorded that song. I knew at that moment in time that Phil knew the formula and that I was aced. I, to this day, believed he tried to keep me out of the music industry. I remember pulling on the side of the road and crying. I was sobbing because I knew that was not me.
How did that make you feel? I mean, my heart hurt when.
Like a has-been?
No.
Let's go to like a has-been.
At
the age of 18 or 19.
Well, yes, exactly.
I mean, to come off the number one record in the world and then have your, Phil Spector becoming the genius of rock and roll music.
Yes.
And I couldn't get arrested if I stood on a street corner nude, and I had a really cute little body. I mean, the bottom line is it was not going to happen for me. And I to this day believe that Phil had some type of ability to keep me out of it just never happened.
That's what Harvey Weinstein did to so many actresses. He blacklisted so many actresses when he couldn't get what he wanted.
I bumped into Bill Medley of the Righteous Brothers, and they were coming off what was the number one record of their time, which was I Love How You've Lost That Love and Feeling. And we were at Connie Stevens' ski extravaganza, raising money for autistic children. And Bill and I started talking, and he said, we were coming off the number one record, and we broke our contract. We couldn't deal with the insanity of Phil Spector anymore.
Yeah.
So I think the more famous Phil became and the star maker, people would not say to him, what are you doing? Why are you carrying a gun into the recording studio? Why did you just shoot the gun off at A&M Studios?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because he was so brilliant and so successful, I think his demons took over. That's my theory.
Do you think that for you, it ended up being a blessing in disguise then that happened?
That's an interesting question. I do not think that it would have started without Phil.
Yeah.
I think that without To Know Him Is to Love Him and Phil Spector, I never would have become who I became.
Yeah.
I mean, he was almost like my muse or whatever you say.
Yeah.
But I do believe I was with my girlfriend, Mary Lynn Ross, in this house, and I was bemoaning about that I had never had another hit record as a singer on my own. And she said, I'm going to use a bad word. You can cut it out.
No, you can
She
use a
said,
bad word.
Carol, shut the fuck up. She said, you won the lottery. You won the jackpot. You co-wrote the theme from Rocky. Be quiet. And this was years ago, and it made such an impression on me. So if you ask the question, I don't think my life would have taken the trajectory that it took if I would have continued singing and had a hit record. And it wouldn't have lasted forever. Maybe I would have had another one or two. I always dreamt of it.
Yeah.
But I went on to do other things, and I don't know if I would have had that success as a singer.
So then did Elvis Presley hear your song and then seek you out?
Of course he heard it. It was the number one record in the world. No,
yes,
he didn't listen to that particular song. Of course, see, of course he heard it. He was in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And he fell in love with my voice. So he had met Priscilla. Remember, we're talking decades ago, as you said.
Yes.
And he said, he would always say to they were called the Memphis Mafia. Those were the guys, that were with him all the time. Joe Esposito was his lead man. And of course, Colonel Parker ran the show. And he said, I love that girl's voice. I love to meet that girl. And one day I was in a market, and this really sort of creepy little guy came up to me, and he said, aren't you the girl that sang To Know Him Is to Love Him? And I went, yes. And he said, Elvis would love to meet you. And I went, right, sure, of course. He said, no, I mean it. So being that I was my father's daughter and sort of lived on the edge, we're talking a lot of years ago, I gave him my phone number. She gave us. And sure enough, he called about a week later, and he said, I'd like to take you up to Elvis's. He'd love to meet you. And I went, okay. And my mother was going, no, you can't go with a stranger. You can't. And I said, Mom, I'm going. I was my own person. I'm going with him. If I don't come back, call the police department. I went up to Elvis's. He was renting a house on Bellagio and had just finished Viva Las Vegas with Anne Margaret, and whom I think was one of the great loves of his life. I've always felt that. And I was at one end of the room and he was at the other, and there was like a pool table, and he was so beautiful. He was like a cat, and I love cats. He was like this beautiful cat in his movements, and I was like a mouse standing there. And he came up to me and he said, why'd you name the group the Teddy Bears? And I thought, it is Elvis Presley talking to me. And I went, just want to be your teddy bear. And that started our love affair.
Was he a good kisser, Carol?
Yes. Don't ask me any other question. Just know he was, because I'm not going to answer it. Just know he was my first love and boyfriend. And he was very, very kind to me, very sweet, and just, he thought that, and I have a picture that I looked at when I did my show, which Roy and I may be doing other ones, but there's a picture of Priscilla and myself back to back. And for one split second, when I was on stage and I looked up at the picture that was on the screen, I went, which one is me? Because we both were brunettes. I have green eyes. I think she has blue eyes. And we looked, he told me he felt we looked alike, that we resembled each other.
Yeah.
And when I looked at that picture, I went, oh my God, we did. And as fate would have it, I did her first film, Love is Forever, with Michael Landon and her and Laura Branigan.
What did you do on the film?
I wrote the theme song with Lee Holdred.
Amazing.
Called Love is Forever.
Yeah.
And she and I talked about Elvis. She used to live down the street from me. She just moved about a year ago.
Yeah.
that was my encounter with Elvis. And I always say I went with him for 9 months, but I was too stupid. I didn't have a baby.
Well, first loves are always so hard to get over because they are so significant. Was that the case for you?
No, it ran its course.
Huh.
I mean, I adored him. I loved him. He said he loved me. But the bottom line is, I asked Joe Esposito that years later. I said, Joe, did Elvis really care about me? And he said, more than you know, Carol. He adored you. And whenever, through the years, we stayed friends. I mean, I went to his opening in Vegas. I would take my girlfriends. In fact, he was with Shelley Fabre, Johnny Angel, how I love you. And they were sitting on this couch and we were coming down the stairs in his dressing room. And he said to Shelley, he said, Shelley, here comes beautiful Carol. She's blind as a bat. We went together for 2.5 years. And I looked at Elvis and I said, Elvis, he said, we went together on and off for 2.5 years. And I said, Elvis, darling, it was more off than on. And of course, he had a great sense of humor. He laughed. And he was just very good to me. And
Yeah.
it ran its course. It ran its course.
Yeah.
He did not want to go out. He had everything brought in, similar to Hugh Hefner. He wanted things to come in. And I was very young at the time. And I wanted to party. I wanted to go out. I wanted to dance.
Yeah.
And that's not what Elvis's MO was. I wasn't quite as available when he wanted to see me. In fact, one time he called and my mother answered the phone and she said, Anetala, my real name, there's an Elvis Presley on the phone for you. Little old Jewish lady, what can I tell you? But it just ran its course. And then my next boyfriend was a psychiatrist. And I think I needed a psychiatrist after my love affair.
What did you think of last year's Baz Luhrmann film, Elvis, with Austin Butler? Did that bring back any memories for you or did that trigger anything?
It was beyond brilliant. It was Elvis. It was Elvis. And not only I said this, Priscilla said it, and the beautiful late Lisa Marie said it. I mean, I met him. I met Baz, and I also met Austin Butler. And Austin told me that he studied Elvis for 2 years before they went to film. 2 years. He was Elvis. On that, I mean, I remember my heart racing at times. I was with my best friend Barbie Benton, and I remember saying, Barbie, I'm really having trouble watching this film. And there were moments of great clarity, moments when I could see that it was Elvis. He channeled him, captured him, channeled him, whatever you want to say.
So beautiful.
I really wanted him to win the Oscar. I voted for him, obviously.
Yeah. Well, speaking of voting for Oscars, you are a member of the Academy, and was it the theme song to Rocky that actually, because you won the Academy Award for co-writing that, and was that what got you into the Academy?
I did not win it. We lost.
Oh, I thought you did win.
Everybody thinks we won it. It's
Isn't
the
that
only
great,
time
though?
that Barbra Streisand ever wrote a song with Paul Williams from a film called A Star is Born, called Evergreen. And two things happened. First of all, there was an article where Barbra said, of everything in her life, the biggest shock was that she won the Oscar over Gonna Fly Now. And the other one was when Henry Mancini said to me at the Oscars, he said, they were up for, in fact, Elvis was offered, if you watch the film, he was offered the part, and Colonel Parker did not like Barbra Streisand. It's in the film. And he said, Elvis said that Colonel Parker turned it down. But I remember Elvis saying that Colonel Parker said, my boy ain't gonna play no second fiddle to no Barbra Streisand and end up a drunk. I think in my mind, in my heart, if Elvis would have done that film, I think he would have lived. I think that more than anything, he loved Jimmy Dean. He loved film. I think he wanted the recognition of becoming not just a performer and a musician, but an actor.
Yeah.
And I think that would have saved his life.
Well, it's arguably, I mean, would you say it's also the song that really, I mean, to know him is to love him. Yes, that was the biggest song in the world. It put you on the map, right? But the Rocky song is what really made your career, did it not?
Absolutely, absolutely. But in between that, I did another thing that put me in front of the entire boy hot rod, surfing community. I'm the only girl in the history, and I'm not bragging. I'm just making a statement. You can look
Yeah.
this up, of rock and roll that ever wrote a hot rod song, and it went to number two. We were on our way to number one, and the Beatles came out with "I Want to Hold Your Hand"
Oh.
and blew us off the number one spot. But that was, well, I took my and Brian Wilson said to me, "We always knew it was written by a," and he sort of spit the word out. And I said, "Well, Brian, how did you
Wait,
know
what
that?"
did he say? We always knew it was written
It
by
was
a,
written, "Hey Little Cobra" became one of the biggest hot rod
yes.
songs.
Yeah.
And Carroll Shelby, of course, is the man who created the car, the Cobra. And he said, in fact, Ford versus Ferrari is all about this.
Yeah.
And he said, so Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, because I had penetrated, good choice of words, the all boys club, said to me, "We always knew it was written by a girl." And I said, "Well, Brian, how did you know that?" He said, "Because you can't take your car out of gear and let it coast to the line." That's the last line of the song. And I said, "Brian, if your car is that much in front, that's exactly what you can do." And they never forgave me for penetrating the all boys club because I'm the only girl that ever did.
Boys Club, right? How has that, what was that like back then? How were you treated? I mean, you were successful, you were you wrote, I mean, the ultimate boys movie is Rocky, and here's Carol.
I know. I refuse to believe that, even though I'm sure it happened, because I'm very positive in many ways. My sister always said that when we grew up, she's a year and a half younger, she never heard me say couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, can't, won't. So I'm positive. So in my mind, I refuse to believe that I lost a job or I didn't get a nomination that I think I should have gotten because I was a girl. I just would not go there. I just kept moving forward. I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that to myself. Even though when I look back on it today, yeah, I wouldn't doubt that things did hold me back from certain things. Um, I mean, I had so many people, so many men that made passes at me and that wanted to keep me, wanted to buy me houses. I wasn't going to go there. I didn't want to do that. And in essence, I think that I just moved forward in a positive manner on my own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Even
Yeah.
though I can understand the movements today.
Yeah, exactly. You risked a lot for your career and in life by not doing what the boys club wanted you to do. At the same time, though, look at you today, like you rock. So
Well, as Hugh Hefner said about me when I was, because Robert Culp was one of my boyfriends, and we would go up to the mansion, and Hef said that I had middle class sex mores. I'll never forget that line. We did a Playboy layout after Rocky, and it was beautiful. It was just beautiful. And in the end, he gave me, and I think I'm one of the only people, it was between the two of us whether he would print it. It was going to be called "And She Writes Songs, dot, 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 also. And I was on top of the baby grand piano, like this Kauai. Beautiful in
Naked?
practically nothing. Well, close, pretty
Yes.
close.
Okay.
Mario Caselli was the wonderful photographer, and I was, after a while, you just start taking off your clothes and you just don't care. But all I could think of was my father is going to go to his poker game, and one of his poker players is going to say, "Your daughter." And we could not settle on picture, one
Wow.
picture. And he didn't, I have all the negatives.
Yeah.
He said that if he would give them to me, and he did. He was a man of his word. And the bottom line is, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
So they've never been published anywhere?
Never.
What are you going to do with that, with those negatives?
Well, we'll see what happens with my documentary. But
Yes.
right now they
Yeah.
have, Elvis,
Yeah.
Rocky, and Me, the Carol Connor story. But no, he was a man of his word. Because we could not agree on that one picture, because it was there were like two pictures, and it was so risque. Because I'm telling you, after a while, you just forget that,
Yes.
excuse me, I'm not wearing
Yeah.
clothes.
But Carol, I also feel that back then what was considered risque, like it's probably very chaste compared to what's considered risque today. I'm
No
sure.
kidding, Kimasabi. But back then,
Yeah.
it was risque.
Yeah.
Back then, Rhett Butler saying, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn,"
Yeah.
was like, it blew the world apart.
Yes.
How could
Yeah.
he say that?
Yeah.
Well, I just couldn't allow the pictures, two pictures out of thousands of pictures that Mario took of me.
Do you like those photos though? Like
Yeah, they're
personally?
beautiful.
Okay.
But
That's good.
he said to me, "You have middle class sex mores."
Okay. So what does that mean?
That means that where my head, in my mind, where my head was at, I could not get past things that my mother and father had instilled in me
Yeah.
growing up, and that was one of them. It wasn't right to be semi-nude, and so I didn't.
But I think we all have mores that come from what our parents instilled in us. And if you didn't have good parents, or if you didn't have the right parents, or if you had several different parents, it would be different. Right. So,
Absolutely. But my parents were, they weren't, my dad wasn't strict, but they instilled a lot of things in me.
mhm.
I feel, honor, integrity, being true to your friends. I mean, Robert Culp used to say to me, "I will go back to back with Carol in an alley anytime, because I know she has my back."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, to me, those things are important.
Yeah.
Today, we're in another way of life.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, life, and I have many different feelings about it, and some of them are tragic, some of them are wonderful. I mean, I think with the advent of the internet, which I love, I think came Big Brother, and Animal Farm and Brave New World, and we are living it.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah, we
living
are.
it, and some of it is good, and some of it is horrifying.
Well, I am in awe and envious that you have seen that progression from how it was to each little milestone as it occurred to the way it is today, because you unlike the generations after you don't have that full scope. You don't, no one has that full picture like you. And it's so important to know where our technology came from, or the lack of it, and how it appeared, because it gives us a clue in the direction that it's going to. And you kind of like, especially being in an industry like music where it's so technology dependent, and the way you recorded.
Yeah, no, it's very, very different. We recorded on a 2-track, 20 minutes. I did 2 takes, one for balance. It was at Gold Star with Stan, which became one of his main producers, main engineers. And I sang it all the way through. There's not one splice on To Know Him Is to Love Him.
Yeah.
Not one splice. Did you hear that, Amado? Not one splice. You know, it was all the way through 20 minutes, walked out of the studio.
Yeah.
And that, but that's how you recorded then. It was
Yeah.
analog.
Yeah.
Then now there's digital, you know, and there's, you know, all the things that are today. Do some of the music of today I love, but some of it I find exhaustingly awful.
I agree with you. I agree. Some of it is just nonsensical, and
Some of it is ugly.
ugly is a good word.
Well, you know, the Cardi B song, which is brilliant, you know, the with Megan Thee Stallion and
Is it
I
WAP?
mean the right. And then the background, do you know what they're saying? Do
What?
you know what they're saying?
No.
Because I can decipher all this. They're saying there's whores in the house. There's whores in the house. This is what we're teaching our kids. I don't know what to say. I
Yeah.
don't want to get into it because I have very, very strong emotions about that. And I'm
Yeah.
not going to get into it.
Whenever you do want to get into it, you call me and we'll record another
Okay.
podcast about that. But and also today kids just recorded on music on their iPhones now, right? Now you don't have to go to a studio. You don't have to do any of that. You can just press record and, you know, record over Zoom, right? Yeah. So you know, you were telling me that you were told your parents if they gave you $10, you promised them there'd be a big house and car and horses. And when you were in junior high, you just longed to be famous and you longed for that, but you got it, right? And all of that, which you longed for as a child did come true for you. And when it was unfolding, did you have that wherewithal that what you had wished for was coming true? Or was there a moment where you just kind of stopped and said, oh my gosh, look at all these things, it did come true? Or is that not really even something that you think about or thought about?
I can sum it up by my boyfriend after
The psychiatrist?
Elvis, the psychiatrist, Dr.
Yeah.
Vadim Kondratiev, saying to me after my second Oscar nomination, which was The Rescuers.
Oh,
I
yeah.
did the music and lyrics for the Rescuers because I also write music. And he said to me, I've never forgotten this. He said, Carol, are you happy now? And I looked at him and I went, Vadim, if everything you have ever wished for, dreamt of, wanted, needed in your life is coming true before your very eyes, you don't have the right to be unhappy. That doesn't mean that I have not had sad moments, and I have, and you know, moments of clarity about what am I doing with my life and blah blah blah. But I'll never forget his statement and my statement. And he went, bravo. And he was a psycho, I had a speech impediment as a child, a psychoanalysis. He was the one that the psychiatrist would go to. So you had to go 2 more years to school.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And those were my words. And
Wow.
he said, bravo.
What I also love about you of being a pioneer, so to speak, is that you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because the internet is not always correct, but
I will.
yes, of course you will. What am I thinking? You co-wrote or wrote the theme song to Star Search and Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Did I get that right? Yes.
I don't have to correct you. I commend you.
So and the reason I bring those two up is because they were such pop culture phenomenons at that time. Today,
absolutely,
today there's American Idol, America's Got Talent, and all those reality shows. But at the time, Star Search was the only one of its kind, and just about every huge big person today cycled through that show. From
Britney Spears,
yes, Christina Aguilera.
I voted on Britney Spears.
Oh, you actually did?
Yes.
Oh my gosh! So you were a judge?
You can look it up in the archives. I was one of the judges when she was on Star Search.
Okay, so this is great then. So, and also we'll get to Lifestyles, but that was also like, MTV Cribs became like, you took its inspiration from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. But, so for Star Search, you wrote the theme song, co-wrote the theme song, and that ran in the 80s and 90s, and they brought it back for like a split second in the early aughts. But, so how do you come up, like when someone says writes a theme, or like write me a theme song, and you don't even like, you don't even know the show yet. Where do you even begin to, like, where do you start? Where do you start writing a theme song for a show like that?
By listening to what whoever the ubiquitous they, meaning the producer, the director, whatever, have to say, and taking notes, because they don't know how to write it. I do. So when they tell me what they need or they want or what it's about, and then if you look at a script, or they show you a segment of the show, or you look at a rough cut of the film, it all comes together. And I take a pad and paper and I write. I just finished a theme song for a new film, and I write everything down, because people will tell you what they need, but they don't know how to put it in song form. That's an art form, but they do know how to talk. Oh God. And so the bottom line is, they will say, well, and I will be writing blah, 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 blah. And I can go to my notes. And that's how I did Star Search. There's a land to make believe, where a dream is but a dream. It can all come true if you do it now, or whatever I wrote. And but it was to the melody that was, I didn't write the melody on that one, but I loved the melody. And it was Ed McMahon's show.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I went to they flew me to Florida, I think it was 3 or 4 times, to be a judge. And that's how I judged Britney Spears.
And what are your memories of that?
That she was adorable. I think she won. I think, but but I don't remember. I mean, it was a long time ago.
I think LeAnn Rimes was on there too, and she actually won.
I didn't judge her. I didn't judge LeAnn.
So Britney Spears is, still making headlines today. So,
oh my God.
So
she's been through so much.
Oh, I know. When you look at somebody, and because you're judging them, is there something as star power, star talent that you can harness and see in the early years? Obviously, Phil Spector heard your voice, and heard something, thought something, saw something, and wrote that song, right? And then you're looking at Britney Spears dancing and singing her heart out in front of you. As a judge, you're doing the same thing. Is it a feeling? Is it what defines that?
It's just, it's like somebody is touched with magic dust. I mean, it's just there. I don't know what there, as President Clinton would have said, I don't know what there is, but you can't miss it because it's there. And if it's star power or the beginnings of it, it's almost like you can see it, you can sense it. And that's what was Britney. I remember once being with one of the executives from Motown, and we went to see Bette Midler, and he said to me, "Oh my God, we've got to sign Bette Midler to Motown." And as it turned out, she had just been signed. But when she was on stage, and this was not when she was a star yet. You couldn't miss it. You just couldn't miss it. It was there.
Yeah.
And there became their success.
Yeah.
There is success.
Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, that's so beautiful.
No, it's not crazy. Some people are touched by that. I mean, in my mind, Barbra Streisand and Johnny Mathis were touched by God. Their voices were touched by God. I'm not a religious fanatic, do not get me wrong, but there is something so breathtaking, so compelling, so outstanding about them. I mean, when Johnny Mathis sang Tonight, or Maria, or the 12th of Never, or Streisand did any of her songs, except Evergreen, of course. The bottom line is, I mean, you were compelled to listen. You could not take your eyes away or your ears, because it was beyond beautiful. It is what it is.
Now, for lifestyles of the rich and famous, how do you write a song that defines a lifestyle that's rich and famous?
Well, because I was at Victoria Principal's tennis tournament in La Costa, And I was sitting next to Robin, and I said to Robin, "Do you have a theme song called Champagne Wishes and Caviar Dreams?" And he said, "No, no, I don't." And I said, "Robin, why don't you?" He said, "Well, if you feel that strongly about it, Carol, write it." So I did.
So you just came up with that name just off the top of your
No,
head?
no, it was a phrase, but we came up with putting it. There's a land of make believe, dreams you come in, and you can dance away. Champagne wishes and caviar dreams. We incorporated it into a song. I took it to Dionne Warwick because at that time Dionne was coming off of That's What Friends Are For.
Mm-hmm.
She was hotter than a pistol, still is. And the bottom line is that was the voice I heard. And
Yep.
Albert Hammond, myself, and Dionne made a couple changes in it. I wrote the music with Albert, and and Dionne made some changes, and the song was born. It was on the show for 10 years.
That's incredible.
Thank you. I thought
and
so too.
and did you ever get your parents the house? Did you ever get the cars? Did you ever did you?
Yes, I got my father after I did Hey Little Cobra. I was given a Mustang, and then I was given I did a GTO thing, and they gave me a brand new GTO, and my parents needed a car. So I went to Mexico to go scuba diving. That's one of the loves of my life. Barbie Benton is my dive buddy. And Jean-Michel Cousteau. I mean, we're diving around the world. My sister's in Fiji right now.
Oh,
As of today, yesterday she
oh,
left. But the bottom line is, um, so I wanted to do something lovely for my parents and my father. So I was a baby blue because I asked him, "What color do you like?" He didn't know what I was, why. And he said, "Oh, I like baby blue." So I went scuba diving, and he went to pick up my car thinking it was my car. And I had to put a big red bow on it and the pink slip. And I gave the car to my father. Of course, it's worth a
oh,
fortune today.
yeah.
But everybody, all the kids, my dad being a jockey, loved to race, and all these kids would, line up guys at the stoplights wanting to race my father because my dad was like you could barely see the top of his head, but he was driving a GTO, and my dad, being having been a jockey, would win the race. But so I gave them that car, and I helped buy them their house. Yes,
Do you know a lot? Like, are you a car person?
yes,
You
I
are.
love cars. I
Why?
I am a car. I grew up in a car culture. California, Southern California is a car culture.
Yeah.
So I grew up with where girls would be, wanting like diamonds and mink coats at that time and whatever. I loved cars. Uh, maybe that's why I, was lucky to write Hey Little Cobra.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
Yeah,
but that is definitely more of a boys club for sure.
no kidding.
So interesting that like, that was just something your relationship with the boys club, I feel, has always been a little bit different as a woman because you could you were you could go toe to toe with them. You were not the meek person who wanted to be kept with minks and diamonds, like you said, and you could
I do
write
have
these
those things,
tunes.
by the way. I had very generous boyfriends, very generous boyfriends. But no, I mean, I wanted to be my own person.
Yeah.
I was determined to do it.
So do you have a car collection or do you right now, or do you just have the
I have a
cars?
gorgeous car. I don't drive it, but it's beautiful. And thanks to my brother, I don't own my Cobra anymore, which Carol Shelby said, "Carol, whatever you do, never sell this car. It's going to be worth a fortune one day." Well, I went scuba diving. I signed over the pink slip to my brother. Idiot, signed it over. And I left to go diving. And my brother's, I said, "Whatever you do, do not sell this car." Carol told me, "Never, never, never sell this car." I came back from Mexico. He had a brand new Porsche and $6,700. And he gave me a check for 3,000. And my car today is worth $1,500,000. I just saw the new owner contacted me and showed me the pictures. I painted my Cobra every other color but white. I mean, it was green, apple green, blue, black, wine color, red, gold. He painted it white, and it's beautiful. And we've been talking about it. It only had like 3 owners, and my engine number 2544, is I had two Cobras, by the way. The first one Carol gave me was a 260. You don't know what I'm talking about, but if the guys are listening, they do. It was a 260 engine, but it had a lot of bugs in it. So then he created the 289, which was my car. And what can I say? I mean, I wish I had it, but I don't. But nothing I can do about it.
Yes, but I love how you still know where that car is. Like it's like when
he found me, the new owner, because it's like in the car community of Cobra.
Yes,
it's like very famous, that car, because I'm the only girl who ever owned a car. In fact, the first one was in my mother's name, Gail Kleinbard, my insurance, because I couldn't have insurance. I was too young.
Yeah.
And it was the fastest production car ever built at that time. So there was no way that I could have insurance. So I was carried under my parents' insurance.
I love that you're known for singing a hit song, for composing a hit song, and for having this hit car that everyone in the car that everyone in the car culture knows belong to you, and the owner's seeking you out. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, and he's very sweet, the owner. He's very kind. I just saw a picture of his little child and his beautiful wife, and my car. I mean, it's beautiful. He restored the whole thing.
Amazing. We're gonna have to get a picture of it and run it here.
I have it. I have pictures of it.
Of course you do. Carol, you take pictures all the time. Like after I met you at one of the events,
Rosses,
you emailed me, the Ross house. You emailed me all these pictures that we took together, and your archival collection must be insane. Are you just love taking pictures, or do you take it to record a memory, or are you doing it for something else? I mean, you're always taking pictures.
Because I didn't when I was younger. I have 3 pictures of me with the teddy bears. 3 pictures. I have no pictures of me with Elvis. I never took pictures, never knew to take pictures. And like Barbie and I, when we do Oscar events, pre-Oscar events, we take pictures with everything so that we don't wear the same outfit twice. That's one of the reasons we take pictures. But I love taking pictures, and it's only a little camera. I don't use my cell phone. I like my camera.
Yes, I know it. I know it is a camera. It's not a cell phone.
And I have a cell phone. I don't use it except in an emergency. And there's a book being done about my life too, and called Elvis, Rocky, and Me. And it's going to be coming out. And the bottom line is, now they have to go through all the different pictures that they want, because I have so many, but I don't have from way back then, which I wish I did.
This is where we go to the part where we wrap it up, because we're so generous with your time, and we're at the present now, with a documentary that is in the works and a book that is in the works. So all of these stories that you've recounted to me, and others that we haven't touched on, and more, are all going to be in there. So definitely everyone is going to keep an eye on for that. And, maybe when it comes out, you'll come back on this podcast.
I would love it.
And we'll talk some more. But
and we'll probably see each other at an event.
Right. We will be running into each other at some point, because we always do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Z.